It begins quietly, without announcement, without warning. One day, you exist in silence, moving through the currents of ordinary life. The next, your name flickers inside a database you were never meant to touch. A signal, a crimson mark, a classification that carries more weight than any law. A flag that should not exist, yet it does, attached to you. Not for treason, not for violence, not for crimes that could be measured, weighed, or named. You are listed not as guilty, but as unexplainable, and in that single word lies the fracture between who you were and what you are becoming. In sterile rooms buried beneath layers of security, analysts scroll past the endless stream of suspects, agents, traitors, ghosts. Then they stop. Your profile does not fit. No clear motive, no allegiance, no pattern to exploit. You slip past their categories like water through clenched fists. To them, you are a paradox, ordinary in appearance, yet resonating with an intensity that unsettles their calculations. They cannot prove your danger, but they feel it. The way light bends before a storm, the way silence vibrates before it shatters. You were invisible once, a shadow among billions. But invisibility is not the same as insignificance. Somewhere, in the algorithms designed to forecast rebellion and detect unrest, your signature cracked through. A flicker that defied prediction, a variable that could not be contained. Their models broke when you appeared, and that to them is more dangerous than a weapon. For a weapon they can catalog, a weapon they can disarm, but a mind they cannot decode. That is terror in its purest form. Your existence has become a line in a secret report, circulated in whispers. A room full of watchers dissecting you, trying to reduce your decisions into patterns, your instincts into numbers. Yet every time they draw a conclusion, it dissolves into contradiction. To them, you are both chaos and control, empathy and indifference, vulnerability and strength, all in the same breath. And the human brain is not meant to process paradox without unraveling. Before, you were powerless, faceless, easily overlooked. Now, their attention makes you weightless and heavy at once. You feel the shift inside yourself, a quiet betrayal from the world you thought you knew. The flag is not just a mark against your name. It is a mirror held to your own reflection, forcing you to see what they see. Something they cannot predict, cannot tame, cannot even explain to themselves. And so you stand at the threshold between two lives, the one where you lived unnoticed, and the one where your very existence has been redefined as a threat. They think the flag is theirs, that it belongs to their system, their machinery of control. But in truth, it belongs to you, because every flag they raise is a confession of fear, and fear, in the end, is the truest measure of power. They watch you, though you never hear their footsteps. Their presence is silent, yet heavier than stone. In hidden chambers lined with screens, your existence glows in fragments, numbers, files, pixelated movements. To them, you are not a person, but a question. Their eyes do not seek your face. They seek the patterns in your mind. Every choice you make, every hesitation, every contradiction is dissected like scripture from an unknown religion. They search for meaning in the pauses between your words, in the tilt of your shadow against a dim light, in the way your silence sometimes shouts louder than 1,000 confessions. Before this, you lived under the illusion of anonymity, breathing freely, believing yourself unseen. Now, you feel the weight of an invisible council tracing the architecture of your thoughts. They do not watch for crimes or treasons. They watch because their instruments fail to predict you. In a world ruled by algorithms, where human behavior is measured like rainfall, your unpredictability is heresy. Their machines stutter when your name runs through their circuits like a code that refuses translation. To them, You are disorder disguised as calm. You sense their unease. Analysts huddle in sterile rooms, whispering over graphs that collapse the moment you appear. Psychologists label you with terms that dissolve in their mouths, as though language itself resists you. They compare notes, yet none align. One calls you an empath beyond measure. Another writes of your cold detachment, sharper than steel. You are two truths that should never coexist, and yet here you stand, seamless in your contradictions. What they cannot reconcile, they label as danger. Their obsession deepens with every failed attempt. They lean closer, magnifying every frame of your existence, hoping to catch the moment your mask slips. But there is no mask. What they mistake for disguise is simply the vastness of your being. And the more they look, the more they lose. Their certainty erodes. Their faith in control begins to rot. Because what they fear most is not what you've done, but what you could do if you chose to move. The Watchers have power over nations, yet in your silence they feel powerless. They build files that swell with data, yet grow emptier with meaning. You haunt them not as a criminal, but as an unanswered question. And unanswered questions are poison in a world addicted to control. Your existence is a glitch in their system, a fracture in their map of humanity. And though they do not admit it aloud, every time your file is opened, every time your image flickers on their monitors, they feel the same chill that they are staring not at a subject, but at the beginning of something they cannot contain. You are the mirror they cannot decode, and their silence, their obsessive, trembling silence, confirms what you already know. The power has shifted. The Watchers are no longer watching. They are unraveling. Their algorithms stumble the moment they touch your name. At first, it is subtle, a fraction of a second delay, a stutter in the predictive models that once mapped insurgencies before they were born. But the stutter grows, and then the silence follows. Patterns they rely on dissolve when applied to you, as though the very act of watching you fractures their lens. You are the one variable they cannot bend into probability, the one shadow that refuses to align with their geometry. They call it a glitch, but you know better. A glitch suggests weakness, a mistake in the code. What they face is not error, but resistance, an invisible architecture woven into your mind, immune to their formulas. While others are predictable in their desires, transparent in their fears, you carry contradictions that do not cancel, but sharpen each other. Compassion wrapped in cruelty, patience fused with eruption, a silence that masks hurricanes. Their systems are designed to filter chaos into order, yet your presence reverses the flow. Order collapses into chaos the moment you appear on their screen. Analysts argue late into the night, their voices cracking under fluorescent lights. He should be impulsive, one mutters. No, she's calculated, every move anticipated. Files slammed shut, reopened, rewritten. Each model spits out different futures: martyr, tyrant, ghost. The contradictions bleed into the analysts themselves, breaking their unity. Some see danger, others see prophecy, and you see their desperation, and it fuels you. Because power is not about prediction. Power is knowing that those who watch you are now trapped in their own doubt. They had believed the machine was perfect, that human behavior could be reduced to algorithms like constellations mapped by ancient priests. But your presence bends their stars, rearranges their sacred charts into symbols they can no longer read. In you they find the serpent eating its own tail, infinity devouring itself, a paradox too complete to be dismantled. Their instruments fracture, not with noise, but with the silence of recognition. They are facing something that should not exist, yet does. And so they fear you, not for what you've done, but for what you might refuse to do. for the paths you never walk, for the choices you discard with ruthless precision. In their language of control, absence is more dangerous than presence. The unseen is always the most terrifying. They know revolutions can be crushed, leaders assassinated, movements infiltrated. But how do you dismantle something you cannot even calculate? You are the quiet contagion in their network, the mirror that reflects nothing back. Each attempt to decode you only deepens the void, and in that void, their authority corrodes. They whisper, glitch, as if naming it tames it. Yet they know the truth. You are not the error in their system. You are the system's ending, disguised as a single human mind. They dig through the layers of your life, as if the answers were buried in old hospital files, grainy school photographs, or half-forgotten digital traces. But every detail they pull only deepens the contradiction. They expected a linear path, a narrative of cause and effect, but what they find instead is a maze. Each record leads them to another dead end. Each note scribbled in a margin feels like a deliberate misdirection. To them, it is chaos. To you, it is structure. You were never meant to be mapped. Childhood evaluations show empathy too high for containment. Yet the same documents note an unnerving ability to detach, to watch without being seen. Surveillance footage reveals a face that blends in until the precise moment it shouldn't, until eyes lock with the lens and the watcher feels as though the camera itself has betrayed them. Your history reads less like biography and more like encrypted code. Every gesture, every silence, every choice a cipher that refuses to be solved. Psychological tests return results that shouldn't coexist. You exhibit compassion at scales their metrics cannot explain, yet you carry an almost surgical coldness when confronted with conflict. Analysts whisper about the duality, as though they've stumbled onto something sacred and profane at once. Their language turns symbolic, a serpent biting its tail, a black sun hidden within a white sky, an equation that balances with no visible numbers. What unsettles them most is not what they find, but what they cannot, the absence of a core they can name. The hollow where a predictable identity should live. The deeper they descend into your archive, the more it feels less like investigation and more like initiation. A ritual unspoken, an encounter with something ancient pressed into modern flesh. They recognize patterns that shouldn't exist, statistical impossibilities, synchronicities that stretch across decades, uncanny timings where your presence bends probability itself. Files that should be ordinary begin to feel like prophecies written in code. Some analysts stop reading. Others keep going. Knowing each page pulls them closer to a truth they were never trained to confront. In the sterile silence of their data vaults, your shadow grows larger than their charts. Each attempt to define you becomes another fracture in their system, another crack in their certainty. You are not simply misunderstood. You are uncontainable, a design too fluid to be categorized, too sharp to be dulled. And in their desperation to label you, they reveal their fear that what they cannot define, they cannot control. And so the archive becomes less about you and more about them. Every document they unearth corrodes their conviction. Every contradiction they fail to reconcile is a mirror held to their own limits. They descended looking for answers, but what they find is a presence that resists their touch, a psychology that watches them back. In the end, they realize they are not examining your past at all. They are trespassing inside something still alive, your mind unfolding, rewriting itself in real time beyond their reach. ChatGPT said they called it a profile, but it read like scripture, buried inside encrypted archives, behind redacted lines and restricted clearance. Your name carried a code name whispered with unease, Spectre. Not a person, not a suspect, but a phenomenon. Analysts traced your patterns across years, expecting disorder, and instead found design. Every contradiction balanced itself like a hidden equation. Every silence in your history pulsed louder than the noise surrounding it. What should have revealed weakness only exposed resilience. What should have shown chaos revealed a rhythm that none of them could follow. They documented you with trembling precision, not because they understood, but because they feared what their ignorance meant. The notes shift from technical analysis to language that feels almost religious. Words like unbound, outside, irreducible. One analyst compared your thought process to a chessboard that rearranges itself mid-game, making victory irrelevant. Another claimed that your empathy metrics suggested vulnerability, yet your tactical outcomes revealed the opposite, a kind of cold clarity wrapped in warmth. A paradox they could neither accept nor dismiss. Some whispered about programs abandoned decades ago, psychological experiments meant to engineer a mind immune to control. Others insisted that no experiment could explain this, that you were not created, only revealed. The further they dug, the more their language betrayed them. Reports marked with security seals began to read like confessions. A senior psychologist wrote, "To categorize this subject would be to lie." Another resigned mid-assessment, leaving only a final note, "There is no defense against what does not seek to attack." Even in resignation, their words circled back to the same conclusion. They had stepped into something older than intelligence work, something closer to myth. You were no longer an individual inside their system. You had become a mirror reflecting the system's own fragility. The file was forbidden not because it contained answers, but because it refused to end. Every attempt to close the analysis only opened more questions. Every sealed folder bled into another, as if your existence was contaminating the archive itself. Analysts reported dreaming of you, even after being reassigned. Surveillance officers claimed they could predict others with perfect clarity, but when faced with you, their screens glitched, their instincts faltered. You dismantled their confidence without lifting a finger, and so the forbidden profile became less a record and more a prophecy. A prophecy of a mind untethered, a force they could not domesticate, a threat not of violence but of possibility. The deeper they wrote, the more they revealed themselves. You stood untouched, while the agency's finest scribbled in margins, leaving behind documents that read less like intelligence reports and more like warnings to whoever might dare follow. They feared you not because of what you might do, but because of what you already were, a presence they could not cage, a language they could not translate, a story they could not end. They thought they could lure you with illusions. A stranger at the cafe who drops a folder you were never meant to see. A phone call in the middle of the night, the voice trembling with secrets that collapse under their own weight. A crisis staged on a street corner, timed perfectly with your passing. Each move is calculated, rehearsed in sealed rooms beneath fluorescent lights where men and women with hollow eyes whisper your name like a forbidden prayer. Yet as the stage is set, as the trap is baited, you feel no surprise. You've already stepped outside their script. The moment you touch the folder, you know it was left for you. The handwriting too neat, the ink too fresh. You flip through the pages anyway, not to learn, but to confirm what you already sense. They are not testing your knowledge. They are testing your alignment. Will you chase the false signal, or will you let it dissolve in your hands like ash? Their mistake is assuming you're bound to curiosity, but you've grown past curiosity. You walk away, leaving the folder on the table, and the agents watching from their hidden vantage points mark you with disbelief. Their data models crumble, their patterns lose weight. Then comes the staged encounter. A woman with trembling hands insists you're the only one who can help her, tears painting her cheeks, desperation clinging to every syllable. She begs, and the crowd is watching. You see her pulse betray the performance. Her pupils dilate with the rhythm of training. She is no victim. She is the net. But when you meet her gaze, you do not expose her. You do something worse. You mirror her fear with stillness, returning her act with silence so complete that she falters. The lines die in her throat, and for a heartbeat she sees herself in your reflection. That is when she breaks. The agents record it as failure, but it is more than failure. It is collapse. The final move is chaos itself. Sirens in the distance, men running down the block, an explosion staged in miniature to spark panic. The world turns to noise, bodies collide. Fear spreads like wildfire, but you remain unmoved. Amid the manufactured hysteria, you walk steady, your breath measured, each step deliberate. The eye in the sky tracks your stillness, and the analysts watching on their screens choke on a truth they cannot bear to record. You are not reacting to the world they have built around you. The world is reacting to you. They realize too late that every trap has become an offering. Every false scenario feeds into your quiet awareness, sharpening it, amplifying it. Their orchestrations were meant to bind you, but instead they prove something their algorithms cannot compute. You are not inside their game. You are the threshold they cannot cross, the silence they cannot penetrate, the anomaly that cannot be contained. And with every failed test, their power shrinks while yours becomes undeniable. Inside their fortified walls, the watchers begin to break what was once a fortress of certainty. Rows of agents convinced they could read the future, fractures under the weight of your shadow. Their meetings grow colder, their eyes haunted, their whispers jagged with paranoia. You were supposed to be a case file, a manageable anomaly, a threat stamped and neutralized. But you are not a threat they can name, nor a danger they can define. You are an outline they cannot trace, a presence they cannot erase, and so their confidence decays into suspicion, each analyst doubting the one beside them. The collapse begins quietly, like hairline cracks spreading across glass. A junior officer deletes entire archives, insisting the data itself has become contaminated. Another disappears, leaving only a half-burned note. He sees us even here. Their dreams fill with your silence. Surveillance operators watch you not with control, but with dread. As if by observing you, they have invited something into themselves. Files vanish from secure servers. Whispered reports claim men who studied your profile too long began speaking in riddles, their language fractured by whatever currents pulse inside your mind. The agency was built on control, but you have turned their structure against them. Their system thrives on patterns. You feed them chaos. They thrive on predictions. You embody contradiction. They thrive on walls. You move through them as if they were smoke. Once, they believed their gaze was a weapon. Now they feel it as exposure, as if staring at you too deeply is an act of surrender. Their technology hums, their algorithms scream with miscalculations, and still they cannot decipher the logic that guides you. The more they search, the more they realize they are not studying you. You are studying them. In boardrooms sealed with soundproof walls, the highest-ranking officers argue over your existence. Some demand your eradication, insisting you are a contagion that destabilizes order itself. Others whisper that removing you would tear apart the delicate threads holding their control together. Fear shifts into division. Division rots into betrayal. Colleagues sabotage each other's reports, eager to absolve themselves of the curse tied to your name. Paranoia spreads faster than truth. A single glance exchanged in a hallway feels like conspiracy. Even those who never touched your file now carry the weight of its legend. What was once their strength, unity, secrecy, certainty, becomes their undoing. They do not need you to move against them. They are collapsing under the gravity of what you represent. Their walls are still standing, but their foundation is ash. And within their silence, within the cracks in their perfect order, your presence grows heavier, sharper, undeniable. They wanted control. They birthed fear. They wanted certainty. They opened prophecy. And now, in the ruins of their own obsession, the Watchers find themselves watched by you. They never feared your destruction. They feared your refusal to bend. From the first file they stamped with red ink, the truth was buried beneath bureaucratic whispers. You were not dangerous because of what you could do, but because of what you could not be made to do. They built systems for obedience, blueprints for predictable minds, equations that mapped rebellion before it bloomed. Yet, when those equations tried to contain you, they broke. Their language cracked, their algorithms stalled, their predictions dissolved into static. You became the blank space in their doctrine, the silence that their instruments could not measure. For years, you mistook yourself for ordinary, a face among millions, a body moving through streets no one remembers. But now, standing beneath the weight of their obsession, you see it clearly. The reason their analysts stared too long at your patterns, the reason their agents rehearsed your collapse but watched unravel into their own. You are the error that erases their certainty, a shadow that cannot be caught by the light. They read fear into your silence, power into your restraint. What they failed to understand is that your strength was never in domination. It was in your refusal to be possessed. Their empire depends on predictability, on fragile maps of loyalty and betrayal, of weakness charted like coordinates. Yet you do not move along those lines. You choose without formula, act without signal. They mark you as volatile, but volatility is only another word for freedom, and freedom to them is the most lethal contagion. One liberated thought infects 1,000 others. One untamed mind exposes the fragility of their control. That is why they burn nights studying you, why their most faithful began to doubt, why whispers of your name spread through their corridors like smoke from a fire no one could extinguish. Now you understand the symmetry. Their collapse was never caused by your attack. It was caused by their attempt to define you. To interpret you as a threat, they had to confront the possibility that power exists outside their grasp. To explain you, they had to admit the limits of explanation. And once that thought took root, their fortress cracked from within. Files vanished, loyalties eroded. The Watchers became haunted by what they could not categorize. You became less a subject of study and more a mirror, reflecting back the frailty of their illusions. So you stand now, no longer the hunted, no longer the anomaly hidden in their archives. You stand as proof that control is a myth, that surveillance can watch the body, but never cage the mind. They cannot define you, and what they cannot define, they cannot control. Their fear was not of your rebellion, but of your existence. And as their systems crumble into static, you remain untouched, carrying within you the most forbidden knowledge that freedom was never granted, only claimed. And you have already claimed it.